Welcome to the Lost Boys to Found Fathers podcast. I'm Gabriel O'Sullivan, and joining me as always is my co-host and homie, Will Haycox. We are men who have suffered the loss of a child, and through this production we desire to offer encouragement, strength, and hope to our fellow brothers who have traveled a similar journey. Good morning, Will.
Good morning.
So this is going to be episode 2 of our series called Intentional Fatherhood, and I'm going to throw it over to Will for him to bring us up to speed and talk about what we're going to discuss in episode 2.
Yeah, so if you joined us last episode, we spent about 20-25 minutes talking about biblical perspectives on fatherhood. We had some good examples and some bad examples of what it meant to be a father in the Bible. We did not discuss the one true Father, God, and we will refer back to him as we discuss everything else we're about to get through in the series. But essentially this series is about it's hard to be a parent these days. Here's some tips to do it better, to be more intentional, like we have on the title for this show is Intentional Fatherhood. And what we mean by that, if you didn't listen to the prior episode, is when you're with your kids, however, whatever word you want to use, you're present with your kids, your mind is on your kids, your mind is on being a good father, on being there mentally as well as being there physically. So that's the kind of long and short of what we're going to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
So last week we talked about some of the theory, some of the biblical examples. This week we want to get into some practical steps. And so I think the first thing, like I said, we already kind of discussed this, but just to quickly go over it, we're not putting down anything mothers do. We're not saying all mothers are stay-at-home moms and they just sit around drinking wine and eating their grapes and the kids are all perfect and they're doing their homework by themselves and moms don't work at all. We're not saying that. If you're a mom and you hear this, or if you're a dad and you hear this and you're offended for your mom, for your wife, you're reading into our words, so don't do that. But this is a podcast for men. We are speaking to men about the struggles that we feel and we've experienced as men. So I want to throw that disclaimer out there. I don't want you to hear this podcast and say, why are they so worried about what fathers are doing and they haven't mentioned mothers at all? So this is not a mother's podcast, so we're not going to do that. But we love the mothers in our lives. We appreciate everything they do, and they're great. So with that being said, fathers, we're working stereotypically. We're out of the home. We're working all day long. We are spending time worrying about, we're trying to keep our boss happy. We're trying to keep our coworkers happy. We're trying to meet deadlines. We're trying to make money, whatever it is. We're trying to provide for our family. We're trying to protect them financially and secure their future. All those are great things. But then we come home, and a lot of times we're just so worn out. Even if we're not physically tired, we're mentally worn out by trying to check all these boxes, trying to accomplish all these tasks daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and 10-year plans and things like that, to the point that it's easy for us to just come home and veg out and want to watch TV or let the kids run crazy because I don't have the energy. So how do we break through that?
And I would just like to say, back to the mom's thing, your wife has been at home all day, chasing these kids. If she's been at home all day, she may have also. We got a lot of dual income families nowadays. She may have been at work all day dealing with the same stuff you're dealing with, and then comes home, and so it's like realize in either situation, it's not like you don't get to come home and check out as a dad, because your wife has either been at home with the kids all day and she's exhausted mentally and physically and spiritually as well, and probably more so which is why you're like, oh cool, I get to go to work today instead of stay home all day because I can't do what she does, and because you're just probably not wired that way. Or if she's been at work all day, as well, and she comes home she's been dealing with the same stuff. So it's like we got to realize that we're up in this thing together, as we say in the movie Juice. If you haven't watched that, highly suggest you go back and check that out. Great 1990s movie. Tupac Shakur, one of the famous actors in that one. So we up in this thing together, right? So we're going to talk about how do we balance time, how do we balance our time not only for us personally, but with our wives. So that way we can be there to support them and the kids, and we can give them some time, as well. And so we're coming at this from a holistic standpoint of this is how we can make some improvements in our personal life, family life, work life to make our home life better across the board. And listen, we are not huge, I'm 46 years old at the recording of this. Will's like 22, I think. What are you?
I wish.
31,
add about 10,
something like that. Yeah. So, we've had some experience, but we have our children are not out of the home, and we're not on the other side of this. Okay. So we're up in this thing with you as well, and we're just going to give some ideas for things that we have seen help us, or maybe some wisdom that we've stolen from other people, from books that we've read, or the Bible.
Yeah, I don't think there's that many original thoughts. So I'm sure a lot of the stuff we're saying you can find somewhere else, and that's great. We're glad we're not the only ones saying this. But back to what we're talking about. So prioritizing quality time, I think, is a huge thing, and it's easy to say that. It's 3 words. But you've probably all heard quality over quantity, and that's true. It's got to be true, because unless you're independently wealthy, and if you are, call me. I'll be your assistant. I only charge like $200,000 a year, no big deal. But unless you're independently wealthy, or you have some wealthy benefactor, you and or your wife have to go to work, and whether your kids are in school, whether they're younger, you're probably only seeing them from, if you're lucky, maybe from 3 in the afternoon to 9 or 10 when they go to sleep. If you're not so lucky and you're coming home late, you're only seeing them from 6 to 10 or 7 to 10, and they're going to sleep. So you get somewhere between 2 and 5 hours a day with your kids.
Yeah, out of 24.
And you got to figure out their bath time, you cleaning up after work, eating dinner, having conversation with your wife, and all of that. And so just getting down to it, you're probably getting 1 to 3 hours of time to actually speak to your kids, to hold them, talk to them, go through whatever problems of their day with them. And then, again, if you're lucky and you don't have to work Saturdays or Sundays, you've got another 10 or so hours in those days, 10 or 12 hours, depending on whether they take naps and all that. So I didn't do this math, but if you're basically just throwing that out there, you might have 20 to 30 hours a week to spend with your kids, and that's not a whole lot, considering that most of us spend at least 40 hours at work. Some of us spend 60 hours at work every week. So just your time and your time distribution, you're spending a whole lot more time sleeping or working for someone else than you are actually spending time with your kids every single day and every single week. So when you're with them, if you want to have any sort of relationship with your kids, if you want to be a biblical father, if you want to show them what it means to be intentional, to lead them well as God created you to do, and as you were empowered by the Holy Spirit to be that person, you have to take advantage of the time you do have with them and make the most of it. So the first thing that I would say, and I think I have this somewhere else too, but it's important enough to mention it, is eliminate as much technology as possible. That whether that's taking away your iPad, taking away your kid's iPad if they're watching a show on it. My daughter's 3, so there's times when my wife needs a break, or she needs to just clean something. She's not just sitting around doing nothing, but she needs to clean something, or we have a 4-month-old son. She needs to take care of him, and our daughter's going nuts and climbing the walls, sometimes literally, and just doing whatever, just being obnoxious. My wife needs 5 minutes, needs 20 minutes, and so she can put on some sort of show. Our daughter can watch that show, be enthralled by it, and it gives her some time. And I think that's fine, within reason, to have the opportunity to be able to accomplish something. You need the child to not be going crazy. But we as fathers need to be careful when we're home, when we have that 2 to 3 hours with our kids, that we're not spending 30 minutes to an hour and a half of it with them glued to a screen and I'm glued to a screen, or they're glued to a screen and I'm just sitting on the couch not doing anything. And so I think that's the first thing, is eliminate that. If you've all seen the picture or the meme or whatever of like two millennials out on a date and they're sitting in a booth and they're both looking at their phones and we all make fun of them. I might be considered a millennial, so I shouldn't make fun of them that much, but I'm not that kind of millennial. But we all make fun of them. Like, what's the point in going out and paying for dinner if you're not even talking to each other? And so the same thing is like, what's the point in being a father and saying that you love your kids if you're not going to talk to your kids or spend any time with your kids? So I think that's the first thing, and I'll let your kids are a little older, Gabe, so you probably have more experience with the technology ise than I do at this point. But that's the first thing, the first practical tip I would give you is, I think I've heard this as I was growing up, like, don't let the TV raise your kids, that kind of idea.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think, there's nothing wrong with every now and then, y'all getting together, having a movie night, or like, hey, it's been a long day, we're going to sit here and watch. Or, for us, it's America's Funniest Videos is kind of the thing that our family
The old ones with Bob Saget or the new ones?
We're watching the new ones. We're recording the new ones now.
No, it's not the same.
It is not the same, but we do like Carlton, on there or whatever.
What's his name? Alfonso.
Yeah, we love that guy. So so we're watching a lot of the new ones because we can record them and play back or do on demand or whatever. So, but yeah, that's not like every day, right? Like, I'm not coming home and be like, okay, let's all sit on the couch and watch TV, every single night. Like, we're very, we're all about not having a lot of electronics in our house. Our kids, we don't have any video gaming devices personally. I'm not saying that's wrong. We're saying for our family, that's just the way it is. Like, yes, they have iPads and stuff, but that is for trips that we use that, for. My wife will do the same thing if it's like she's got to get something done or she needs to work and like the boys are going nutso because it's, in summertime or they're out of school or whatever. Then she's like, okay, you can go watch Do Perfect, or you can go watch AFV. Kind of these specific things to give her a little bit of a break if they've been, playing, but then started fighting or whatever the case may be. But yeah, when we like to do things as a family. And I was reading something the other day where my wife, a couple Father's Days, I guess, over the past 10, 15 years, she's bought me these little books to like fill in about my life, right? Like, so that way you can kind of let your kids read it when they get to be teenagers and whatever. And I'm looking back through that the other night with my middle son, and he was really enthralled. He was like, read me another one, all these pages. And so I was reading them, and the things that I was writing down, weren't, they were about the things that my family did together, like the experiences that we had, right? The trips that we took, all the fun things that we did. Now, do I have memories of my family sitting around and watching movies or us watching AFV with Bob Saget when it was originally on, back before you could record it, unless you had your TV hooked up to a VCR.
Yeah.
And or I do have memories, obviously, of us, going to the mall and going to the movies and this kind of thing, which were good movies, and they stick out, really because they were not something that was so humdrum, that we did, and so. I think what you're saying is good. Like, how can we maximize the time so that we're interacting with our kids, and not just in play. I mean, it doesn't have to just be play. I mean, it needs to be teaching them how to work. Like, I've been really convicted of that recently because me and my boys put out mulch, and like one of them was like all in, dude. He worked like his little rear end off for like 6 hours straight, and he's 7 years old. My middle one. Man, it was like a struggle to get him to be out there for 3 hours. And I'm like, dude, I have failed at teaching you how to work. There's a funny story that I'm not going to tell on the air but about all that situation. Where he was trying to say rake the mulch, but he didn't use the word rake. There was a similar word that had a different consonant towards the end, and he called it raking without the word raking, the dirt. And I was like, what did you just say?
Excuse me?
And he didn't even know what he was saying because he didn't know the term rake. And he didn't know this was called mulch. He thought it was called dirt. And he was so upset about having to do this thing to the dirt. And I was like, oh Lord, I've failed you as a father.
I would be too. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, I have not taught my children how to work, right? So I think we need to have some intentionality about teaching them to play and having fun with them, but then teaching them how to work, as well. And that can be a part of our time together. And listen, I remember as a kid, like my dad's teaching me. I say dads because I had two dads. So teaching me. They weren't in the same household, by the way. Okay,
So
two separate families. Don't clarify that these days, right?
Unfortunately,
absolutely. So they taught me how to work. Right, this is how we work in the yard. This is how we cut the grass, put out mulch, pull weeds. Edge. Whatever the case. This is how we take out the trash. This is how we clean a car appropriately. Right. This is how we do the outside, the inside, the tires, the door frames, like all this stuff. And I have memories of that. This is how we clean a bathroom. This is how we clean a toilet. This is how we dust the furniture. This is how we vacuum. Like they taught me those things about the things you need to know when you grow up and become a man. And I don't have negative feelings about those times of work. I have positive feelings. You know why? Because I was with my dad and they were invested in me. So like we got to remember that like the intentionality can be in learning how to work. The intentionality can be in learning how to manage money. The intentionality can be in serving. Like, are we taking our kids to serve somebody? Are they
jumping ahead?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll be quiet. I'm gonna throw it back to you. I've talked enough.
No, you're good. That's like at this rate, like 5 episodes ahead. So
okay,
we're good.
All right, cool.
No, that is something that, and we can get the next topic would be leading by example. But no, I mean, I think I echo what you're saying. Like, some of the best memories I have are like I played growing up. I played a lot of video games because I don't know. My dad liked, I guess, like Atari and then like Nintendo. So when I was a kid, we had a Nintendo and then a Super Nintendo, and went from there into all the Nintendo 64, PlayStation, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But we lived out in the country, and so basically the way I remember it, like if it was sunny and not 30 degrees, we were outside running around, or even if it was 30 degrees, we put on jackets and go. But we ran around outside. My family had 3 acres. My grandfather had 50, and so we had plenty to run around in. And as we grew up, we got airsoft pistols or paintball guns, and we'd pretend we were getting attacked by the Germans. We were hiding in the trench, and we would assault the beaches of Normandy. We just did that sort of stuff. We had dirt bikes. We would run around. So like we did all this stuff outside, but I also played a lot of video games when it was raining, when, whatever, like we'd have an hour or something a day we could play video games.
Yeah.
And so I remember both of those things, but because I like video games, like I remember those fondly.
Yeah.
I have family memories, the video game. You can bond over video games. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Your brothers,
like me and my brothers bonded over playing, like, I don't even remember.
Contra.
It's like Nintendo. Well, we played like Nintendo 64 wrestling. Like, and we didn't even watch wrestling at the time, but it was like The Undertaker and all these guys, just Goldust, and all these guys, like, we just beat each other up. And it was one of those games where, if you remember the Nintendo 64 controller, there's like 15 buttons on this thing or 20 buttons on this thing, and you had to push like down, left, up, right, yellow directional button, right bumper, left bumper to the left, and it would do some move, and we would never be able to do it. We just like stand there and just push the one button and just punch each other over and over again until our characters were worn out. So we had fun. We did silly stuff. But back to the point which you're trying to make, the times that I remember, the times that bond me to my family, to my dad, to my mom, were spending time together, going to an apple orchard, or like I have a strong memory of every Saturday morning my dad would cut the grass until I got old enough to do it. Then I have a lot of fond memories of doing it myself. But we'd wake up, we had Saturday morning cartoons, and we would wake up. My dad would have, if the weather was appropriate, he'd have all of our doors open where our screen doors were keeping the bugs out. Turn the attic fan on, and he'd have bluegrass music just blaring from his shop. And we'd sit there. I'd smell the grass that was recently cut, and I love that grass smell. And would watch cartoons while eating breakfast, while listening to him mow. And it's like my mom's in the kitchen, my dad's outside, and it's like a whole family thing that we have going on, and everybody's playing their part. We have the quality time of like everyone is doing what they need to do to build the family up. So all that to say, I agree with you. It was my dad showing me how to work, my dad, modeling what does it mean to be a dedicated father. We're creating these routines, these traditions, and we're all doing it together, not just like kids go play with the video games.
Yeah.
So one other thing I wanted to get in before we wrap up this episode is modeling, and we'll get into leading by example in the next episode, but we talked about the importance of intentional activities, discussing things with your kids, whether it's, right now my kids are 3 and less than 6 months, so there's not a whole lot of like relationship problems. There's not, this kid picked on me. There's not a whole lot of that. But when it comes time to have serious discussions, whether your kid's really screwed up and they need those conversations, or whether someone else has really hurt your child and you need to love them through that, having those difficult discipline conversations or those encouraging, let's figure out this problem in your life conversations, that is a bonding activity if handled well. If you're not coming down, you're such an idiot, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
And so taking that time to show love through discipline is an important part of bonding. And then one other thing is, our church just recently talked about the Sabbath and honoring the Sabbath. And I think that's something that's important. We talked about before, the way prioritizing your time in playing travel baseball and never going to church. So we should live the opposite of that, where we showed our family the Sabbath is important. And we're not talking about the Jewish Sabbath of Saturday. We're talking about the God-given example of spending one day a week in rest. And I don't know that we necessarily go to like, grandma or great grandma's, like nobody lifts a finger, I cook all my food on Saturday, so I just barely heat it up, and all that. We don't want to necessarily be legalistic, but the idea is we're taking time each month to do something as a family without distraction. We're honoring the Lord. We're being thankful for all of the blessings He's given us. And we're demonstrating to our kids that you don't have to go all of the time in order to survive. And you have a little more intentionality with, you do all your work in 6 days and you can rest and recuperate in that 6th or 7th day.
That's good, and that's a time that's great for the family, as well, just to slow down, focus on the Lord, and focus on each other. And man, we have to guard those times, and those are the times too that, kind of back to your former point there, that you can have some good conversations on those days that you slow down. And ideally, this would be happening every week, on Sunday. And some people, it's got to be a different day because your work schedule, or somebody's working, in the hospital and they have to work on Sundays, or, whatever. We understand not everybody's lives are the same, but we got to have a day, right? God gave it to us as a blessing, not as like, oh, you have to do this. It's like, no, you need this, and you need to take it as a gift from me. And I spent some time over in East Asia, and dude, it's just like go 7 days a week. There's never a difference. There's no slowdown. And I'm telling you, it's just a different vibe, and it might be like that if we live in the South. It might be like that if we lived in New York City or California or somewhere like that. It might just be the same. But it's a different vibe. It's a different feel when there's no break from the norm, where you're pausing and just spending time focusing on the Lord and focusing on each other. So we definitely encourage that as well. So thank y'all for joining us today. We'll kind of close this episode up. Make sure you check us out on Lost Boys and Found Fathers on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Also, check out my books, Thou Will Be Done. Put a question mark at the end of that. You can find that on Amazon, or my newest one, Every Little Thing, 6 Small Steps to Perfect Peace. You can find that anywhere books are sold. Thank y'all for joining us today. Let's not be lost. Let's be found in Him.